All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Leadership and Television Show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. And again, you see another panel of great black men, and we are talking about redemption on today. What does that mean? You're going to hear some amazing stories, and it's kind of the culmination of all the conversations we've been having, from equity and justice to the black men mentality or mental health, a little entertainment. So I promise you're in for a good time. Two of these faces, well, actually, I'll take that back. One of these faces you know, one of the other faces you've seen if you've been following me for a minute, and then there's a new face. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting from my left with this big personality over here. Go ahead and start introducing yourself.
Hey, my name is Dwight Futch. I'm with the organization, or I am actually the CEO of the organization Parole Reform Georgia 7 Atlanta, and glad to be here.
All right.
Absolutely. My name is Chris Butts from Long Island, New York, and I'm with the Calvin Butts Memorial Scholarship here in Atlanta, Georgia, and also based out of New York, Long Island, New York, that is.
Two New Yorkers. I promise you that was coincidence. I did not know that was going to happen.
My name is Ron Green, founder and CEO of Operation Snatch Youth Development, and I'm also the owner of G&G Studios in Woodstock, Georgia.
All right, so let's talk about the issues that are on the table. So I know each one of you has an issue that is near and dear to you. So I'm gonna start with you. What are you working on currently? What is going on in your space?
Well, one of our projects that we're working on at this particular time is new legislation that has to deal with parole reform and those that are locked up behind the prison walls of Georgia. Our main concern is how do we get our loved ones home, those that have been considered as model prisoners inside the Georgia prison chain gang. Many of our individuals, or many young individuals, have been in prison under a life sentence of 7 years. A life sentence in Georgia several years ago was 7 years. Here it is 30 years later, and they're still sitting in prison, and they have been denied parole over and over and over again. And the same generic reasoning is either not enough time or the nature of the charge. And we know the nature of the charge never changes. And so our question to the legislators is, what is the legislative intent when it comes to those that are in prison and parole? So we feel that there is a level of systemic racisms and biases within the parole board, and we have a concern about it. And we need to have the conversation ASAP.
So is it that age-old question of, are we punishing to deter bad behavior, or are we just punishing just to punish?
I think what it is for Georgia, we know that Georgia was the last state to abolish slavery or even want to let go people during the time of slavery. Matter of fact, it was part of the 12 states, or many others, such as Mississippi and Alabama and others. And so, yeah, I think what Georgia really has a problem. Georgia's parole board needs to be revamped. You have people sitting on Georgia's parole board that are prosecutors. So why would you have a prosecutor sitting on a parole board, and then you have somebody coming up for parole? And so the question is, what happens if that prosecutor indicted that individual? And so now we have a conflict of interest. So yeah, we have a major problem when it comes to parole in Georgia, because they are no longer rehabilitating, but they're just punishing now. And so my question today is, if an individual is a model prisoner inside prison, working in the governor's mansion, model prisoner, why is it that when that individual comes up for parole, that individual is denied? Well, if he's a model prisoner working in the governor's mansion, then surely he could be a model prisoner working outside of the mansion, such as in our community. And so we're just finding out more and more that, hey, man, it's more about money, more so than anything. And the 13th Amendment that applies to the abolishment of slavery has just reintroduced slavery from another mechanism, which is the Constitution. And so if you get convicted, hey, plan on spending the rest of your life in slavery based on the way the system is operating right now.
All right, Chris.
I don't even know.
All right, all of y'all know how Dwight is, so
It's time to go, man.
How you follow that up?
Hey, B.
Oh, please, you're allowed to be a lot more simple as you need to be. This is his life's work. So, and he has a personal stake, which we're going to get into his personal stake in this, because he's been through this. So he definitely, once you hear his story, you'll know why. So,
Exactly. I'm excited to hear all that story, man. So a little bit about Calvin Butts Memorial Scholarship. So it began after my brother was killed back in 2009. And so some close friends of his and my mother came together and wanted to do something to take kind of a tragedy and transition into something positive. And ideas were scholarships. So, started out just doing kind of different events. And, sometimes in the hood, you just do different things. But remember people when they passed on. So we did barbecues.
Now, we talking about the T-shirts, the block parties.
You know what I'm saying? And then we kind of grew. We started to see that, man, the love is here, but, we want to try to progress and we want to give back. We can't give back unless we have, monetary gains. So we started to strategize a little bit more. We did a comedy show a few years back where we promoted, and we also did something called the Chinese auction. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but just different strategies and ways to raise funds. But we're also giving something back to the community. People are seeing something when they make purchases. So we've actually transitioned here into Georgia, and last year with COVID, really it was a blessing. We were able to do an online commencement, and so since the graduates weren't having a physical graduation, we actually were able to get a DJ. My best friend Latoya was able to get a DJ Root Queen here in Atlanta, and we put together an online commencement. And so we had about 111 applicants, just kids from all over, man. And we've only really done it out of New York, and then as of 2018 here in Atlanta. And so, it was a blessing. We were able to expand into West Virginia, where we had a recipient, Florida, where we had a recipient, California, Tennessee, New York, of course. So we were able to expand into different states. So the goal is to just keep progressing with that. This month, at the end of the month, we're doing something called Meet at the Mountain. And we're going to have some people, anybody who's supported or heard of the Calvin Bus Memorial Scholarship, to come out with their apparel. And we're just going to, walk the mountain. And it's mental health month, I believe it is this month. And so, just kind of tap into that and tap into people who have been through a tragedy, with the story with my brother that was a tragedy, and it impacted my mental health, And so just being open about that and letting people know we can come together as a community and let's work towards something. And that's something that's given back to our high school seniors who are overcoming and going through their own challenges as well. So
I'm going to assume that idea for that mountain thing came from you and Toya being on the mountain the other day, because I saw. Oh, I keep an eye on everything. I keep an eye. Shouts out to She Thorough, Latoya. This is one of her second clients that's been with us. Shouts out to her amazing firm. But yeah, I figured that. I was like, when you said they were on the mountain, that's where that came from. How many scholarships have y'all given so far?
Man, we've given out, because we've been operating since 2010, basically, mostly in New York. So over 75, 80 scholarships, So, yeah.
All right. Ron. Well, first of all, let me say it's a pleasure to be here on Leadership Blend and watching your own growth and development and what you do. So I appreciate you. And
yeah, you see me from IBNX days.
And what the gentleman just shared about what they do is awesome, man. I think it's awesome. I'm glad to be a part of this panel. So Operation Snatchback Youth Development was started in 2015. It's a youth development organization that targets at-risk, marginalized, and underserved youth, ages between 13 to 24. Me growing up, I was a knucklehead, man. I had a little direction, little mentorship, and there was a lot of negative influences in front of me, and I had a real tough and hard life because of some of my choices. So based on that is why I started the organization in 2015 to build young leaders. And I think Frederick Douglass says it best. He says, it's easier to build a strong child than it is to rebuild a broken man. It was hell to rebuild me, right? So we focus on building young leaders from a young age up. Our focus is on leadership development, personal development, character building, image building, drug prevention, an array of different other trainings that we do. We have a training location in Austell, Georgia, under the Sweetwater Mission Complex in Cobb County. That's our headquarters. We do a yearly event called the annual Cobb County Youth Awards, is where we recognize youth from around the county who have certain challenges but still seem to push through those challenges and do well academically in their homes and in their communities. We have a big event that we do. We give them awards. We put them on stage. We invite the community in. We have DJ, free food. It's just a whole shebang, But we want to lift them up. So that's kind of the basis of Operation Snatchback Youth Development, is to build young leaders so they're able to tap into that incredible gift, talents, and abilities that they have buried deep within them.
I just want to say to Ron's credit, when I met him at my former job, we're not talking about 2 or 3 kids. It was what, 60, 70 kids that
Yeah,
day, 50,
yeah,
60 kids?
yeah.
And parents showed up. It was quite a spectacle. I was quite impressed with it. I was like, this is not a small time thing. So
Well, no, it's not, and not to cut you off. It's not. So TJ Maxx and Starbucks are our biggest community partners and funders. They see the value that we bring and what we do, so they decided to jump on board and support us not only in time but in with their dollar too. So we appreciate them, and make sure I want to mention them on here. We be in trouble.
we believe in shout outs. It's fine. You can do it. We believe in shout outs now. We believe in shout outs.
But no, it's this is an organization, man. We're doing big things, and again, it's about preparing our youth to take a leadership role and to guide, direct, and motivate, empower, so they can reach their goal and what they want to do in life. So yeah.
All right. So before we start getting into brass tacks and getting into stories, I'm going to take a break. So we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to get into everybody's story on the Leadership and Television Show with your host Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so we're back with today's panel, and we're talking about redemption, rebuilding your life, having endured trauma or things of that magnitude. So we're going to get into personal stories now. So each one of them is going to share how they became such great advocates for their issues. And we're going to start with, to my left, which I feel like I should start to my right, but we'll get the longest one out the way because I know you can go in grave detail. So Dwight, share your story about your run with the criminal system.
I promise you I'll be briefly for you.
No, they don't need to. That's not even fake that.
Okay.
That's not even fake it. Don't even try to keep it authentic.
Keep it authentic.
Keep it authentic.
Okay. Well, I graduated from high school, but because before we can talk about redemption, we first got to talk about where we came from. Then we understand what redemption means to me as an individual and others. I graduated from high school in 1979, went into the military, spent many years in the military, and from the military came home, went to pre-law school, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, graduated with a degree in corrections administration, and then I became a correction officer, and I began to work inside the prison walls. Eventually, I left prison walls and became a juvenile detention officer, and then juvenile caseworker. So for long periods of time, my life has been centered around helping the outcast, so to speak. As an officer, this is what we do, and so. One day I decided to move to Georgia, Cobb County, Georgia. And when I moved to Cobb County, Georgia, I opened up what they call, where we're from, they call them halfway houses. In Georgia, they call them reentry programs or transitional houses. And I decided to open up a transitional house, not a black transitional house.
I was about to say, you didn't say it was all black.
I know that's right. What I know about black. A male's transitional house. And we did real good. It was a reentry program, and it was an alternative to incarceration program. So we stayed in the courtrooms as a diversion program in Cobb County, and we worked closely with the prosecutors. I did for the most part. And so every other day or every other week, I'm in the courtrooms doing everything I possibly can do to divert the sentence. If I can divert it, I was going to divert it. If you called me and you had a particular charge, I did everything that I possibly could to divert it. I talked to your attorney, their attorneys, and then I sent letters to the prosecutor, different affidavits, doing everything we could do to create the diversion. And we were very successful at it, very successful. It was a self-paid program. It wasn't granted by the state, or nobody had rights to it. Didn't want them to have it, because when you start taking money from the government, you got to start doing what the government tell you to do. And I'm not willing to do that for my people. I'm not willing to sell my people out for some grants. I'm going to keep it 100 with my people, and I wasn't going to let a grant tell me you can't do this and you can't do this. No, we're going to do everything we can do to salvage our people, even if it means introducing them to Jesus. Okay, because when you have grants, you can't talk religion with grants. They won't let you do it, I promise you. And so we did that, and we were very successful. I was so successful with the males program. until they said, hey, Mr. Fudge, open up a females program. I said, nah, man, the women, they got problems, B. They got problems. They got too many issues, the women. I'm not going out like that. And then the mother came and she was like, please, because you got the brand program. Your program is, you branded in Cobb County. The prosecutors know you, and you good. I said, I don't want that females program. Well, eventually I had a change of heart, and I decided to open up the women's program. And then as soon as I opened up the women's program, I think I was in the women's program for about 2 years before I was charged with rape. And then that's when this whole ordeal started, me going through the criminal justice system. Somebody said, well, how was you charged with it? Well, the way it went is I caught some females smoking dope inside the houses. And they were already classified with long felony records and they had rap sheets as long as could be, because they've been in and out of problems and in and out of troubles. And you already know some of them folks used to call me Captain Saberho, because I'm out there trying to save everything I possibly can save. You see what I'm saying?
I'm glad you use that, but carry on.
Okay.
Carry on. Carry on.
So I'm out there saving everything out there. You see what I'm saying? I couldn't care less what you in trouble for. I'm trying to save you. Yeah, right. But I messed around and saved the ones that didn't want to be saved. They say they wanted to be saved, but they really didn't want to be saved. So eventually we caught them smoking dope, put them out. Once I put them out the program, they had to go back to prison. So they were salty. And so you already know, if I put you out my program and you got to go back to prison, you're going to try everything you possibly could do to try to, hurt me now. And they did. They told those people, the caseworkers there, hey, he raped us while we were in this program. And so the question is, later, where's the forensics? Where's the toxicology? Where's the scientific reports? Where's all these things? Unfortunately, in Cobb County, you don't have to have them. All you have to do is have a felony accusation. When you're accused of something in Georgia, for the most part, you're going to prison, you're going to jail. And if you think you ain't going, you're going. Watch what I tell you now. Georgia has over 40,000 men and women sitting in Georgia's prisons and jail right now. 70 to 80% are guilty, but the ones that are not guilty, those are the ones that I'm concerned about. And so, so I was one of them. I spent over $40,000, $50,000 for my freedom and still didn't get my freedom. I was forced into a plea deal. They gave me a jury of all 12 white folks. And they told me you could either take it to trial or you can take the deal. Well, I told them I was going to take it to trial until I went in there and saw it on white folk. I said, wait a minute. That ain't a jury of my peers. Y'all done lost y'all mind up in here. You see what I'm saying? And so, And then next thing I know, the judge said, take Mr. Fudge back and y'all come up with a plea deal. It took a while to come up with one because they had all kind of numbers, 30 years and 20 years. And
so how many, because you had counts, how many counts did they?
I had 30 counts, so you could say rape.
And that was for how many women?
3 women. I still ain't figure how I got 30 counts.
I was trying to do the math.
I guess 10 counts for each. All you gotta do is pull my records. That's 30 counts. But see, at the end of the day, what they did, Ricardo, they now processed it. Now process means we gonna charge you with it all. But then if you take the deal we give you, we gonna act like, in other words, we gonna slide it to the side. We ain't gonna convict you on that, okay? But you convicted me like you convicted me on it. So eventually I wound up going to prison on all of that. I did 5 on it, came back home. They gave me 20. They gave me 20, but they first gave me 20 straight. I supposed to do 20 straight. Been home now 2.5 years, so I only did 5 on it. As soon as I came home, I went back to become a paralegal, learned the law, and today I'm a certified paralegal. That's how we got caught up with the Parole Reform Georgia program. Because while I was in prison, I saw so many of our brothers in there on armed robbery doing life sentences and didn't kill nobody and didn't hurt nobody. And they've been in there over 25, 30 years on an armed robbery. Come on, bro. So I had to create a program that will speak to the volumes of probation and parole, okay? Because right now, it's so many of us on supervision, probation, and parole right this very moment. And then there's so many of our brothers sitting in prisons right now that are eligible for parole. but they are refusing to give it to him just because. So now today, since I'm home and I'm not afraid, that's number one. And I don't know why I'm not afraid of them, because every time I talk to some brothers and sisters, they say, you're not afraid to do what you're doing? I'm saying there's no fear in love, my brother.
But wait, there's a part, because you came home and then they came back and got you.
Oh, they came back and got me another time. One time they came and got me. I was at the house with my wife, and she has a firearm, and the probation officer came to the house, and he said, I need to search your house. I said, for what? He said, because you're on probation. I said, no, you don't just search my house because I'm on probation. That's a violation in itself. You could do a visible search, but you can't do an in-depth search. Because before I went to prison, I worked in the law library for 3 years. And then you got to look at my history. I've been in criminal justice for a long time. I just been an officer in the North, not in the South. But in the South, they will trick you out your life if you don't know the constitutional law. Yep. So they came in my house where everybody on probation is supposed to submit to a search. I said, no, when you're on probation, you have to submit to a visible search. That means what you call a plain view. It means you can come in my house and you can look over, in which if you see something in plain view that causes probable cause to move into a depth search, then you can do that. So they got mad because I knew that. So they called themselves searching, and then they went upstairs while I wasn't there and found the gun in my wife's drawer, pulled the gun out, gave that to me, and sent me back down to prison for another 2 more years. You talk about hurt. I'm better now. I can talk about a lot of it now. I'm getting better though. I'm getting better.
All right, so that's the first one. That's why your advocacy is so strong.
I know, right? The show over, y'all. Let's go.
I'm getting better, man.
Mad respect for you, man.
Okay, so I warned everybody these would be very in-depth stories that these gentlemen have lived. So I'll say Crystal terrified. So we'll go to Ron. Ron, let's look into yours. Let's talk about yours. So you had a bout with mental health, drugs, all that stuff. So let's get into yours. All right, so we just finished Mr. Dwight's testimony, which has everybody in the room speeches, and they all looking at me crazy. Nothing I can do about that. It wasn't my line. So we can go to our next panelist. Ron is going to share his story as well. So take it away, sir.
Okay, so I grew up in a pretty rough environment, right? It's kind of probably like the chorus line of a lot of other people that grew up. I grew up about 90 miles outside Chicago. I grew up to a single-parent mom. She had no education, really. She worked 3 or 4 different domestic jobs to try to put food on the table. It was 6 kids in the household. And, you know, we like to eat, right? So she did the best she could with what she had, with what she was. You know, she did the best she could. My father wasn't around. I grew up in the projects, the bricks, ghetto, whatever you want to call it. And when a normal day for me would be walking outside, and what I would see was criminal activity, gangbangers. Most of my partners was gangbangers, prostitution, you know, gunfights, and just that whole dynamic of living in a world of chaos. That was a normal day for me, and it wasn't long before I started to be pulled by negative influences. Right, age of 16, I started selling drugs. At age 16, at age 17, I became hooked on those same drugs that I sold, crack cocaine era, back in the 80s. So at 17, I was a full-blown crack cocaine addict. So when most kids are 17 and studying for a test in school, I was trying to figure out at 17 how I was going to rob somebody, steal somebody, trick somebody, or do whatever I had to do to get some more crack. And that was my life starting at 17, full-blown crack cocaine addict. And the next 27 years, I would call them 27 years of darkness. I would have been arrested over 30 times. I've been sent to the penitentiary on drug charges. I became homeless. my house was a piece of cardboard that I taped together and put in the woods. And when it rained, I had a big piece of plastic to put over it. And that was the spot. That was the crib. And, you know, I was the guy when you traveling downtown Atlanta here and you go to an event or something and you get downtown and you get off at the light and then you get to the light and you stop on the exit and there's usually a guy there holding something, right? He's holding a cardboard sign. I've held that sign for a long time. That was my life, climbing out the woods and holding a sign. I had went that far down, and that became my life for a long period of time until one day I went back and got my cardboard box and got on my knees. And I said, God, I don't know how to fix it, man. Mama didn't raise me like this. It's got to be more than life. I don't know how to get there. Could you please help me? And when I said that prayer, there was something activated inside of me. I made my way to a treatment center in Marietta called The Extension. And it's an inpatient program. And I stayed 1 year. And I got professional counseling. I got therapy. And I learned an identity. I learned about who I was, right? And what I learned was that all the time I had incredible gifts, talents, and abilities that the world was just waiting on. And if I didn't deliver it to the world would hurt behind that, man. So I found my way at The Extension. I found the power that I had inside. You know, I say this all the time. My greatest asset in life is that I used to be a junkie, living in the woods and being sent to prison and used to hold a cardboard sign. That's my greatest asset because, you know, I've rebuilt myself through the help of other people and systems. So that's a great asset for me now because I know how to rebuild people, right? So at The Extension, after I graduated, staying clean wasn't enough. I said, okay, that's not enough. I got to do more, right? Because the way I operate now, the mindset that I have is I owe a big debt, right? I've ravaged counties, not only Cobb County, Fulton County, but counties across the United States. I've ravaged them. I've tarnished their reputation by stealing, crime, jacking people, robberies. I owe a hell of a debt. And it's so big, I probably won't be able to pay it off, but I'm gonna try like hell to do that while I'm here. So that's my driving force. I gotta pay it back, man.
Well, let me ask you this, because
yes.
You have kids. So let's factor in the fact that you had kids going through all this. So what was that like?
So I was a deadbeat dad for many years. Held by addiction, I was a deadbeat dad. And, you know, my kids didn't know much about me and I didn't know much about them. I know I loved them, but I didn't know how to be a father because I was held captive by this addiction. However, moving forward now, I have a wonderful relationships with all 6 of my kids now. I had to work on that, right? And I had to make it a priority to be able to get in a space where we can have dialogue. I can lead. They can look at me as a leader, a mentor, a father. We had to get to that point, so I had to work hard on it. But during those times, I was a deadbeat dad.
So the oldest child, is he or she?
She.
Did she ever see you in that space? Because she's the oldest.
She did. She did because she saw me in that space later on in her life. You know, as she grew older, around 18, because I was in active addiction at 18. So she seen me in that light. So I jacked up a lot of my kids' relationship back in the day there. I really screwed it up. But I've learned that anything is redeemable, right? You could recover from anything. It's just a matter of what you have to do that. And my first thing was getting on my knees. Second thing is I changed the people that I surrounded myself with. I was the first, 1, 2. I asked God help me, and I changed the people who I surrounded myself with. Key, because we become who we hang around with. Mm-hmm. That's who we become. We take on those characteristics, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to take our second break, and when we come back, we're going to get into Chris's story on the Leadership and Television Show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so we are back on today's panel, and we're talking about redemption. So we just heard the moving stories of Ron and Dwight, And now we're gonna get to Chris. Chris's is adjacent, so I'm really interested to hear his because it was your brother that sparked yours. So let's go into that moment. What all happened and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so first off, I just want to say thank you to Ricardo for having me on the show. I appreciate you wholeheartedly for the invitation. And just hearing both of these gentlemen's testimony, Mr. Dwight, what he went through, I'm moved, and Mr. Ron as well, is what they went through. I'm moved by their stories, man. It's inspiring me to do more, you know. So with that being said, you know, my own testimony is I grew up in Long Island, New York. And fast forward a little bit, because when my brother was killed, he was actually 26. I was 22. So headed into my senior year of college, I was in college at Detroit Mercy in Michigan on a lacrosse scholarship. And so ended up coming home for the summer. And my brother, you know, my brother had some run-in with the law as well, you know, growing up. And I don't talk about it too much because I don't want that to tarnish who he was before he passed, but it doesn't. You know, listening to their testimony actually motivated me. That's a part of who he was. That's a part of his story. Absolutely. You know, his tribulations. And so he was older than me. He grew up a little bit different than I did. He was more into the streets, you know, but always was just a good person. Didn't have mentorship. You know what I'm saying? And I look at that now as a 34-year-old and I realize my father was there, but he and my mom weren't aligned, right?
So I was gonna ask, so y'all had the exact same parents?
Yep, same household, same mom, same dad.
Just you two?
Just us two.
Okay.
Right. So growing up in that household and your dad is there until you're about 12 for me, but my dad wasn't there for my brother at the most important parts of his life when he really needed him. So we talking about 16, 17. Yep. And that's where, you know, listening to your story, Ron, is right where you need that male mentorship and that male role model. Absolutely. And so I look back at it now and I see that my brother was looking for that in other men. You get what I'm saying? Like an older man, like somebody to kind of, you know, emulate, you know, and kind of like, you know, go after, you know, be a part of, build a relationship with. And so he found that in the streets. Yep. You get what I'm saying? And so the first time going to jail, he ended up with an armed robbery. You know, armed robbery. It's so crazy that y'all are talking about both of these things. You know, and he did 2.5, 3 years. Ended up coming home, but man, when he came home, he was a different person. He was a different person. And my mom always talks about it. That, you know, he came home, got 2 jobs, you know, cut out, you know, the lifestyle that he was living. And he knew, he's like, man, I want to do better. I want to, you know, have a wife. I want to, you know, start to have kids. He was talking like that, you know, and and it just so happened he went and started school and was getting an associate's in graphic design over in Briarcliff, you know, in Long Island, New York. And so he was doing so many things, man, and it just so happened summertime, I come home from school, we went out that night, you know, and my brother didn't even really want to go out that night because at this point, you know, we valet park in the Hamptons, you know, so they'll have late parties and whatnot, and so we usually get out around midnight or later, and so but he got out a little earlier this night, so talked about going out, and we ended up going. Had a good time. Ended up going to a diner, which is an after-hours spot that pretty much everybody in the town usually goes to, or whatnot. And just a regular night, and we weren't even going to go. And I still remember it vividly to this day. We were going to go straight, but my little cousin who was in the back wanted to see his then girlfriend at the time. So we thinking nothing of it. Pull over, boom. You know, going to the spot, everything's regular. You know, now there were 2 people in our hometown. One who used to actually be my brother's best friend. I'm talking about this guy actually used to stay the night at my crib. You know, they would hang out, homeboys and all of that. I knew him growing up, you know, and him and my brother were having a little bit of friction over a woman. So he's always over a woman, right?
Always over
you
a
know,
girl.
so my brother was talking to the young lady first, and he had kind of got wind that the other guy was talking to her. And he had approached him, not on a, you know, just kind of asked him like, hey, you know, Well, yeah, so I'm walking from old girl house. Funny story. He was like, yo. Where you coming from? Oh, no, I was just at the gas station. But mind you, my brother, God rest his soul, though, he was like, yeah, he had answer wrong. I was going to beat him up, though. But, you know what I'm saying? So, that's just kind of do my brother. So, long story short, they had this little friction over the situation. And the guy's older brother, I know of him, don't know him personally. I come into the diner this night, I see one of my close friends, I'm chopping it up with him in the front. And this guy is just staring at me. And I'm like, hey, like, what's up? Like, you good? And he just starts to go on, and we end up having an exchange of words. And I'm like, yo, I don't even know, dude. Like, da-da-da-da, boom, boom. My friend ends up taking him outside, the dude outside, I guess, to try to defuse the situation. Now, mind you, this guy's gang-related. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm kind of thrown off because I never even had a discussion with you. But I'm like, okay, maybe it goes into the situation with him and his little brother and my brother. And my brother's in the back of the diner. Now, I just told you a scenario about my brother, so you know what kind of person my brother can be. Right. But he's not, and especially when it comes to me, I'm his little brother. He didn't care, So I'm like, I'm not even going to go tell him. Let's try to boom, really diffuse the situation. Ends up going, we're outside of the diner. I go to check on my friend because he's out there. And all of these guys are out there. So I'm checking on him, make sure everything's good. And we get into that. Me and the guy end up fighting. Long story short, we end up fighting. I'm getting the best of him, right? But mind you, there's 40 other people out there that are with them. So I end up getting the best of him. I get a glimpse of my man, and I'm like, yo, where's my brother? Because I'm looking for my brother, because I already know. If my brother comes outside, it's going to be a wrap. Where's my brother? Right. He like, yo, he's like, I grabbed him, but he was like, yo, little bro's good. He got it. I'm thinking like, you didn't grab him? Like, why? I catch a glimpse of my brother. And to this day, I don't really speak about him much, but my brother was out there fighting. And he was fighting for me. You know what I'm saying? He didn't care. You said that, because this has been an ongoing problem with these kind of people in the hometown. I played sports. I didn't gangbang. I didn't do any of that. But, you have kind of jealousy and animosity, Absolutely. Which is something that now you can look on and have conversations with people. But at that time, when you 17, 18, that's just kind of what happened.
Ready to pop off.
That's the way of the world. And so, man, long story short, the guy, his friends end up surrounding me. I get jumped by 3 or 4 people. After I get up, I find my brother laying on the ground. My brother had on a red shirt, so I thought he had got knocked out, being honest with you, because the numbers it was lopsided. So I go over and I go to pick my brother up, and he's just limp. And so I start seeing blood come out of the, on the ground. Start giving him CPR right away. And just air going in, coming out. And, I just hold my brother, and I'm like asking somebody to call 911, and that was it, so ambulance came, and we ended up going to the hospital, and that's where they kind of pronounced my brother dead. And it was a dark avenue for me after that. Very dark. I didn't care about much. I could really relate to the space that you were in. I didn't care about much. I wanted to see everybody hurt that was involved, had anything to do, knew anybody. I could have very well ended up dead in jail within the first 3 years after my brother died. Just because of how I was acting, my mentality after everything happened. So I end up I played lacrosse in high school. I had a black lacrosse coach who actually helped me navigate and go and find a grad assistant position here where they paid for my master's, and I was coaching. So it got me away from New York, which was honestly the best thing that could have happened to me, because had I stayed in New York any longer, I'd have been dead in jail. So fast forward, I'm here down in Georgia. Now, we had started the scholarship 2010. We started it a year after, but like I said, it went into like the barbecues and everything, and just kind of like hanging out. As we got more strategic with it moving forward, we got the comedy club, the comedy event. We did a pancake event at Applebee's, raising money, and people really started to give. They started to really connect with the cause. Because it was a big story in my small town. Everybody knew Calvin. It really shocked a lot of people because the person who killed him and him, they played sports together, like they grew up together.
Oh, so they knew each other.
They knew each other. They were best friends at one point. They actually went to the prom together as homeboys at one point.
So he was shot while all that was going on, or
he was stabbed. He stabbed him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the guy ended up stabbing my brother from the back when the story came out 3 times in the back. And so and that's how he passed from the stab wounds. Yeah. So fast forward, we got the scholarship started and we gave out our first one, and I believe in 2010, and it's really just progressed from there. Transitioned down here to Georgia, and we did the online commencement, like I said, with COVID hitting, and that was a big hit, man. We had a lot of support. We raised a good amount of money. We gave out scholarships to 7 recipients, and we want to really target those kids who have went through their own adversities in high school. And because I think we kind of miss it. Just like how you're going through what you were going through at 17, we got these kids going through the same thing.
Absolutely.
So that's the mission of the Calvin Bus Memorial Scholarship. Like, there's a quote that I live by now, and it's, we have 2 primary choices in life. You can accept things that the way they are, or you can accept the responsibility and change them. And that's what we're doing with the Calvin Bus Memorial Scholarship, and our clothing line also that we have that goes along with it. So.
All right, so we're going to take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about solutions and fixes for other black men who are encountering this or going through it currently. So stick around the Leadership Bend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so after all these moving testimonies, which I'm not crying because I only cry for Grey's Anatomy, so I'm not crying today. But now we're going to get into some pieces that are will be good for other black men to hear. These stories of redemption, how you were able to do certain things. I'm going to start with Ron. Absentee fathers and rebuilding relationships are real issues for a lot of black men. A lot of them don't know where to start. A lot of them don't know how to do it. How were you able to do it? Like, how did you do it?
I didn't. That's just it. In my opinion, myself alone can't do it. You can't do it. So you need to foster relationships. If your dad is not around, you need to find someone who is smarter than you, who maybe even walked the earth here longer than you, who is wiser than you, who can give you wise counsel, who can give you direction. So I sought those people out, and I surrounded myself with those people. And I'm telling you, I'm just a product of those people, man. And I did that through the extension. I found some great people there at the rehab. A pastor at church, Dr. John Posey, he's like one of my first mentors. He's taught me a lot about, just being here on earth, working 9 to 5, keeping your head above water, just getting by, making ends meet, and then you die. That's not how we're supposed to live. We got so much more. He taught me about personal development, about reaching inside to your gifts and talents and abilities and be able to deliver to the world something phenomenal. So I sought those people out, man, because I couldn't do it.
In your the treatment program, were there certain elements that they treated? Because I know spiritual is big for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of spiritual, particularly for you, having been in that state, were there certain programs or pieces they gave you in the program that you were in to help with like the mental health or things of that capacity? Or was it all just primarily spiritual?
No, I think for me, the program I was in, it's a spiritual program, not a religious program. It's a spiritual program that requires you to identify something greater than yourself as a higher power, right? For me, that's God. That's easy for me, but it requires that because I was beyond human repair. You know what I mean? But outside of that, the counseling, and my brother here got it right. As men, we grow up in something, I did some studies on this and actually went and did some training on something called the man box, which is the collective socialization of manhood, which simply means what the world has come to believe is the correct way to behave as men. So one of those things is men should never cry. One of the biggest myths ever. Mm-hmm. And what happens is we hold all of our emotions in, and as we grow older, we have no emotional intelligence, right? It also says if you get into it with another man, you bust his head to the white meat to show who the biggest, the baddest, the strongest. And by that mindset, we filling up the prison systems with that mindset. We never really know how to be emotionally intelligent because the world say we got to be big, we got to be bad, we got to be strong. It also says, you know, we look at women as objects and property as opposed to the queens that they are. And I didn't even know I was doing this to my son. I used to throw him the football. He's about 5, then he'll throw it back and it falls short. I say, hey man, you throwing like a little girl. But guess what? I'm telling him right there that look, you superior over women, man. Don't never throw that. And all it is he's just weak. He can't throw it that far, right? But he takes on that mentality. I should be up here. Women should be down there. And I didn't even know I was sending that message. And as he gets older and see images of women on social media, we start viewing them as property now, as opposed to the queens that they are. So this is stuff that is inside the man box that's destroying us as men. And we have to break out of that man box and learn how to show love, show compassion, be able to tell our brothers that we love them, you know, we support them. That's what being man. That's where the real manhood is.
Mm-hmm. All right, Chris. Grief is something that takes folks under, and I've seen it. You know, people just can't conceive the loss of a sibling, the loss of a parent. How were you able to survive that? Were there people that came into your life? Was there somebody in particular? Your family? How did you all survive that as a unit?
Absolutely. Yeah, the community, like the village, man. Like if it wasn't for my mother, hey, shout out to Sharon Butts. My mother is the strongest woman I know on this earth. Because after my brother was killed, she was so busy worried about me and getting things arranged. Because I was oblivious. I couldn't function. You know what I'm saying? She was able to do everything and still had to mourn losing a son. And I still to this day respect that to the utmost because it's a different loss. I lost my brother, but she lost her firstborn child. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I can never take on. I don't know what that feels like, you know, so if it wasn't for her, you know, my family, like I said, cousins, my mother's side of the family is really big, and I'm closer with that side, but man, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody just being supportive, man, and you know, my coach who was like a father figure to me, you know, for him stepping in and doing what he did, and he has his own story, his own testimony, man, that is just amazing, but he's one of my biggest inspirers, you know, a great mentor, father figure, you know, so it was definitely the village and the community. It was the people around me, man, and, you know, dropping to my knees and becoming closer to my father, you know what I'm saying, like my spiritual father. So that's the only thing that kept me alive, you know, I wholeheartedly believe that. So.
All right, Mr. Dwight.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yours is so multifaceted. Like, what out of your whole story? What part sticks with you the most? Is it the being in the prison system and seeing it internally? Is it interacting with other guys who've been farther along in this process than you? Like, what is at the stem of your advocacy?
Well, let me say this: broken people are masters at mending. And so I believe that during this season of my brokenness, what has inspired me the most about it is the interaction with individuals behind the wall, those that are in prison, because normally I would have never interacted with them, being a correction officer. Being in there's a certain level of pride with that. You got to remember, I grew up in the hood, but I wasn't the hood. I was able to get out of it at 17 and go into the military and travel, but I never forgot how to speak the language of the homies. So by the time I got to prison, I had to drop my pride, and it's almost I had to go back to the hood. Mm-hmm. You feel me?
I do.
Yeah, I had to go back, and I'm like, So now I'm in the bed, and you know, and Pookie over there, and Fat Cat, and Bay Ray, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, because I've been out of it so long, but it's like riding a bike. You never forget it. So I was forced to eat bread with you now, even though I know you was a slime ball, bro. You feel me? But I was forced to get to know you now. And that helped me out a lot because what you did was not as important to me as who you are. Because then I got to really know you for who you, and now I understand why you did what you did now. And I'm like, wow, bro. Now I want to try to bring you home now, because product of the environments, we become victimized. Wrong or right, that's up to God. But the product of the environment brought my man here. He didn't want to kill old boy, but old boy pushed him to that. Now it's 30 years later, he's still sitting there. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, why are you still sitting here, bro? Because you sharing your soups with me. You a human being. You really is. You're not a number. And so I got to meet people and see people for the humanity part. See, we may only just see the newspaper article, but I saw the humanity part. And there were some cats, I would say, if I was advocating for them today, it would be, let him come home. And then there's other parts I say, bury him, B. Don't let him come home, because this, he's straight savage.
He a savage. You might
He's
want to keep
taking
him.
soups and he cutting. She just said something. So I've been through it. So it was that interaction, because I had a chance to eat with all of them. And I had the savage come say, could you help me? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, bro, if I get out, I'm going to tell them on you. And it ain't going to be what you think. I'm not trying to get you to the crib. You's the danger. You just,
Menace, right?
What? And so it was that interaction. I mean, this is on God, man. And it was a spirituality, because you already know, man. Look, I love Jesus.
Yeah, we know prophet.
Word up. I love God on life, you know what I mean? Yeah, on G-Stack, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm done with you.
I know.
I'm done with you before you go left.
So the interaction that blessed me the most, man.
All right, so
Wow.
final thoughts, and then tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
Final thoughts here again is just, number one, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. But final thoughts is, for me, whatever it is that we're looking for in life is also looking for us, man. And we have it buried deep within us to get there. It's built inside of us. You can reach me in my organization at www.snatchback.net on the website, or IG. You can reach it at operation_snatch_back.
Chris, same thing. Final thoughts. How do people get in touch with you?
Final thoughts, man. If your story is your story, and people need to hear your story. So nobody can tell your story like you, and somewhere somebody's looking for exactly what you have to offer. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Look for us April 24th. We're going to Stone Mountain if you're in Atlanta. So meet us there. We'll have the details on. You can find us at Instagram, Calvin Butts MS on Instagram, or you can also find us on Facebook, Calvin Butts Memorial Scholarship on Facebook. And then also May 30th, we'll be having an online commencement where we're going to be rewarding some lucky high school recipients. So definitely be a part of that. You can check us on Instagram for those details as well.
Keep it cute, Dwight.
You can reach me by
Clearly, you don't know what that means. Clearly, you don't know what that means.
Oh, man.
Okay, how you
There is
get
always
just
one.
reach me.
There is always one.
Yeah, you can just reach me on Facebook, Peace Justice, man, and y'all just stay blessed, man. Keep happy, keep smiling. You good.
All right, so there we have it. 3 amazing stories, 3 amazing gentlemen, and we will see you guys next time, same place, same time, on the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.